We live in a world where wealth is incredibly easy to display. Open social media for 5 minutes and you'll see the usual signals. The car, the watch, the hotel suite, the designer clothes, the table at the expensive restaurant. And after seeing enough of it, something strange begins to happen. We start confusing the appearance of wealth with wealth itself. But those are two very different things. A $100,000 car tells you one thing for certain. Someone spent, financed, or leased enough money to have a $100,000 car. What it doesn't tell you is how much money they still have. You don't see the bank account. You don't see the debt. You don't see the investment portfolio. You don't know whether that purchase was insignificant to them, or whether they're going to spend the next 6 years paying for it. And that's what makes visible wealth so deceptive. The things we use to judge whether someone is rich are usually the exact things they had to give up money to acquire. Morgan Housel makes this point brilliantly in Times The Psychology of Money. Wealth is difficult to see because wealth is largely the money that hasn't been spent yet. Think about that for a moment. The expensive car someone decided not to buy doesn't appear on Instagram. Neither does the watch they walked away from. Nobody posts a picture of the first-class upgrade they declined and captions it. Here's another $3,000 still invested. But financially, those invisible decisions can matter far more than the things everyone notices. Because real wealth isn't about proving that you can afford something. It's about reaching a point where money gives you options. Enough savings to walk away from a job you hate. Enough investments to survive a bad year without panic. Enough breathing room to turn down an opportunity that doesn't make sense. And eventually, enough control over your finances that you can decide how to spend something far more valuable than money. Your time. That's the paradox. The image of wealth is designed to be seen. But wealth itself is often invisible. So if visible wealth can be so misleading, why are we still drawn to it? Why do intelligent, hardworking people sometimes spend money they don't have on things they didn't even care about a few years earlier? Part of the answer is that we're often playing two very different games without realizing it. The status game and the wealth game. A status game is about relative position. Who has the better title? The better address? The more impressive car? The bigger office? The invitation everyone else wanted? And that's what makes status so difficult to satisfy. There is always someone above you. You get the promotion, and suddenly you're comparing yourself with the person one level higher. You buy the car you wanted, and 6 months later, someone in your circle arrives in something better. The finish line keeps moving because the reward isn't really the thing itself. It's what the thing says about your position relative to everyone else. Wealth works differently. You don't need your neighbor to become poorer for your business to become more valuable. You don't need another investor to lose money for your portfolio to compound. A useful product can make the person who created it wealthier while also making life better for the people who use it. That's a positive-sum game. Value can be created rather than simply displayed. So why is the status game so difficult to ignore? This is where the French thinker René Girard becomes interesting. Girard developed an idea known as mimetic desire. In simple terms, we don't form all of our desires in isolation. We learn what to want partly by watching what other people want. And once you notice this, consumer behavior starts looking very different. Maybe you genuinely love watches. Great. But maybe the particular watch you suddenly want became desirable only after the people you admire started wearing it. Maybe you really need a larger home. Or maybe your definition of a normal home quietly changed after spending years looking at the homes of people wealthier than you. This doesn't mean every luxury purchase is foolish. And it certainly doesn't mean enjoying expensive things is wrong. The danger begins when you can no longer tell the difference between something you value and something you want to be seen valuing. Because mimetic desire has no natural stopping point, there will always be another car, another neighborhood, another title, another level of access. And if every increase in income simply unlocks a more expensive group of people to compare yourself with, you can become richer on paper without ever feeling financially secure. That's the trap. You can spend decades winning increasingly expensive status games, while quietly losing the wealth game. There's actually research behind this idea. In 1996, Thomas Stanley and William Danko published Times the Millionaire Next Door based on years of studying wealthy households in America. And what they found challenged the popular image of a millionaire. We tend to picture wealth as something obvious. The enormous house, the newest luxury car, the expensive clothes, a lifestyle that announces success before the person even enters the room. But many of the millionaires Stanley and Danko studied didn't fit that image at all. A surprising number lived relatively ordinary lives. They were careful with spending, accumulated assets over long periods of time, and often lived well below what their net worth would have allowed. In other words, if you passed them at the grocery store, you probably wouldn't know they were wealthy. And that's the idea behind what we now often call stealth wealth. Having money without needing everyone else to know you have money. At first, that might sound strangely boring. What's the point of becoming wealthy if nobody can see it? But that's exactly the point. When your lifestyle doesn't have to advertise your net worth, you remove an enormous amount of pressure. You don't need the next car to prove you're still successful. You don't need to upgrade the house every time your income rises. You don't need your spending to keep pace with the expectations of people around you. And that creates a powerful financial gap. The gap between what you could spend and what you choose to spend. That's where wealth can quietly accumulate. The money that doesn't disappear into another lifestyle upgrade can remain invested. It can buy productive assets. It can provide liquidity. It can give you the ability to survive a downturn, leave a bad situation, take advantage of an opportunity, or simply sleep better at night. None of this means you have to live cheaply forever. Money is meant to improve your life. Buy the things you genuinely value. Take the trip. Enjoy the restaurant. Own the car if cars actually matter to you. But there's a difference between spending money because something improves your life and spending money because you need other people to believe your life is impressive. One consumes money. The other can consume your identity. And perhaps that's the real advantage of stealth wealth. You're no longer trying to look financially free. You're quietly becoming financially free. Here's one of the strangest things about making more money. It doesn't always make you feel richer. Imagine someone earning $50,000 a year. They drive an older car, they cook most of their meals at home, they think carefully before making a big purchase. And they tell themselves, if I could just make $100,000, everything would be easier. Then eventually, they do. For a while, it feels incredible. There's finally room to breathe. But slowly, almost without noticing, the definition of normal begins to change. The old car that seemed perfectly fine suddenly feels a little embarrassing. The apartment that once felt comfortable starts looking too small. Restaurants that used to be reserved for special occasions become part of the weekly routine. Subscriptions multiply. Vacations get more expensive. Convenience becomes expectation. And eventually the person earning $100,000 starts saying something surprisingly familiar. If I could just make a little more money, everything would be easier. That's lifestyle creep. And what's dangerous about it is that it rarely feels like reckless spending. Each individual upgrade seems reasonable. You worked hard. You got the raise. Of course you should enjoy some of it. And you should. The problem begins when every increase in income quietly becomes a permanent increase in expenses. Because then, your income grows. But your financial freedom doesn't. There's a psychological reason this happens. Researchers studying what's often called hedonic adaptation have found that people tend to adjust to changes in their circumstances over time. Things that once felt extraordinary gradually become familiar. The new apartment becomes just your apartment. The new car becomes just your car. The expensive restaurant becomes somewhere you go on Friday. The pleasure doesn't necessarily disappear, but the novelty does. And now you need another upgrade to recreate the feeling the previous one used to give you. That's the treadmill. You're moving faster. You're earning more. You're spending more. But financially, you may not be getting much further ahead. This is why one of the most powerful moments in building wealth isn't necessarily when your income increases. It's what you do after it increases. If your income rises by 20%, your lifestyle doesn't have to rise by 20% with it. You can enjoy some of the difference. And keep some of the difference. That gap matters enormously. Because when income grows faster than lifestyle, something begins to happen quietly in the background. Your savings rate increases. Your investments compound faster. Your dependence on the next paycheck starts shrinking. And eventually, the raises that once bought you nicer things begin buying you something much harder to see. Years of your life back. After all of this, maybe we need a better definition of wealth. Because we've been trained to recognize it by what we can see. The car, the watch, the house, the restaurants, the vacations. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things if you genuinely enjoy them and can comfortably afford them. But none of them, by themselves, tell you whether someone is actually free. There's a much simpler test. How much control do you have over your own time? Can you walk away from a job that's making you miserable? Can you say no to a client who treats you badly? Can you survive a year when things don't go according to plan? Can you take an ordinary Tuesday afternoon off without asking anyone for permission? Can you spend time with someone you love without constantly checking the clock? Those things aren't very impressive on social media. But they may be some of the most expensive things money can buy. And that's what makes the pursuit of status so easy to misunderstand. You can spend enormous amounts of money creating the appearance of freedom, while quietly increasing the amount of money you need every month just to maintain that appearance. Every new obligation raises the cost of your lifestyle. And the more your lifestyle costs, the harder it becomes to walk away from anything that pays for it. Real wealth moves in the opposite direction. Savings give you breathing room. Investments give you options. Assets reduce your dependence on your next paycheck. And eventually, money stops being something you use primarily to show people what you've achieved. It becomes something that protects your ability to choose. So enjoy money. Build a good life. Buy things that genuinely make that life better. But don't confuse the evidence of spending with the evidence of wealth. Because the person with the most impressive lifestyle isn't necessarily the richest person in the room. Sometimes it's the person nobody notices. The person who doesn't need to impress anyone. The person who can leave. The person who can say no. The person whose calendar actually belongs to them. Because in the end, the highest return money can give you isn't another possession. It's the ability to decide what happens with your time.